All right, let me ask you this. Have you ever been asked that kind of question where the person's waiting to get a short answer, but for you, that answer is anything but short? Well, this week's guest is about that. When I asked her where she was from, I did not expect to have such an amazing conversation about it. So, if you're new to the show, hi, my name is Kirti. I invite individuals from around the world to have a conversation about who they are, what they get up to, or some theme in this world. And this year it's been about AI and what could we shift our perspective about. Sarita is coming with a different perspective on how to navigate her tapestry of cultures and also how does it support her in the way she runs her business, in the way she has created something super fabulous. I have split these episodes up into two. One is about, as we speak about her journey, her different cultures, and the second one is all about her entrepreneurship. I look forward to hearing, as always, what your thoughts are after these conversations. So if you're a kind of person who prefers to keep it in a comment, do share it out in a comment. If not, why not join my newsletter and let me know? You can say hit reply, and I'd love to start a conversation about this. And who knows, you could inspire me to do a podcast just on something you have to share with me. Enjoy this week's episode. Have a good one. And so, how has all of who you are shaped you to the way you see the world and your place in it?
Well, so I'm born and raised in a Western country, and my family is from a socialistic, communistic, politic background. So I feel like I was privileged enough to experience both worlds. Mm-hmm. And so it's beautiful to see the goods and bads of both sides and always can decide for myself, like which direction I want to go to or where I actually want to participate of, some structures, systems, or beliefs.
And that's because you have mixed culture, right?
Yes.
What do you think of the term mixed culture?
Well, it's a little bit the truth. So let's say if you are, let's say, from only one culture, that's what you know. Mm-hmm. Coming from different places, and let's say I can always switch and say, okay, for this topic, my mindset is Western, but for that, when it comes to family values and stuff like that, I'm definitely, from a family from former Yugoslavia. And I love that because that is the truth. I've gotten to know both sides, and then I've decided for myself what is better for my soul and my character. And if I would have only been born and raised in Germany, it may have been a completely different story.
Did you ever feel pulled being of different cultures? Because did you ever feel pulled from different cultures? So you're former Yugoslavia. Your parents have mixed heritage, so they're from American descent and Macedonian descent, I would say.
Correct.
And then you've traveled the world as well. So when you are exposed to all these different ones, did you ever feel like pulled or that you have to live up to any of these expectations?
Oh, yes, a lot.
Can you give me some examples of what that's like?
Yeah. I mean, so my Macedonian family is very traditional and old school and old fashioned and not always in a good way, especially for women. So my mom was already someone who was, let's say, speaking up for women, which was so unusual for her time and culture and family. And she was facing a lot of obstacles and a lot of resistance, especially from the male family members. Mm-hmm. So let's start from a place of female suppression. And now it's so interesting. So, I mean, clearly I do not look completely Macedonian, right? But like being in Macedonia and having, all my family members there and cousins, etc., and I speak the language, I was fully integrated, but always looking different, right? But in Macedonia, the fact is like they love people who look different. They are so curious because of that socialistic communistic regime. We
Really?
people from that area where it was a wonderful country. There was not much diversity going on. So when
Mhm.
diversity happens, they want to know everything about you. It's still until today like this in Cuba. And when I went, I experienced the same thing. Like people want your time. They want your story. They're going to sit down and listen carefully. So for me, that's a wonderful thing. And I always got a platform in Macedonia, whether if it's print magazines or TVs, and they were all like, they just wanted me to speak in Macedonian language and talk about myself and how I experienced it as experiencing the country. So for me, it was always nice. And then now that I grew up, I've built a massive network in Skopje of adults just like me. And whenever you speak the language, yes, they pull you and say, you're Macedonian, you're one of ours. And it's nice because they're so inclusive. They're in a beautiful way, so inclusive. They want to be around you. They want to spend time with you. And that's something I really, really enjoy. Whereas the Black community,
I was going to ask you.
yeah, whereas the Black community, it's like, so let's say we talk about Black and Brown people.
Mhm.
I would always consider myself Black because in the United States, if you're from African descent, you're Black. No matter how fair you are, and if you still have African blood, you're Black. And I'm absolutely okay with that. So when I travel the world now and say I'm Black, people are like, "Oh, you're not Black." Well, I am. And then I explain, why I'm actually saying this. And then you may find some Black people who are like, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, yes, I am. And then they would give me their perspective and say, when you're mixed race, you may get a different treatment than dark skinned people. And therefore, the struggle is not the same. So, no, you're not Black in that way.
This comes to something okay, this is for me like that territory that every person, I'll call it out for what it is. Every person who is not from Black African descent tread on their toes, right? They're always like tiptoeing around it. So, can I ask you all these questions now? Are you open for them?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no one size fits all, right? And you're saying now in the States, I would be considered Black. If I leave the States, I'm not. That's almost like a sense of exclusion within the community.
It is.
How do you navigate that complexity in itself? Like, because even if you see the opposite, another race, completely different color, and I get irked by it, and we did touch upon this whenever we met. It's like, I don't see color. And then you're like, how can you not see color? So it's like this amazing spectrum of complexities. How do you unpack it? Because I don't know. I would love your insight for it.
I think the key really is, so I was, lucky enough to grow up in an environment where no racism existed. So I started learning about racism when I was 21. So,
21?
21.
Okay.
Exactly. So when I grew up in Frankfurt, like, you have to imagine I grew up in an environment which was extremely multicultural, not even like London, because in London they have sub communities within their communities.
Okay.
In Germany, you don't have that. We had one male, one guy from Eritrea in school, and we never talked about skin color because nobody cared. The N word, never. I heard it never at school, in not in a good way, not in a bad way, just never. So that was my bubble growing up. So I learned about, let's say, racism at a very late age. And so the only thing I can do from now is to listen, to learn, and even if there is a, let's say, a racist situation, to try to navigate that. So yeah, sometimes I think it's very interesting. And when I travel to Africa, you feel, and like Black Americans are different than Africans. So I just try to really honor and appreciate the fact that I'm able to travel to the States to be with my Black family. I can travel to Africa. I have, a big network of African friends, and all I'm doing is sitting, learning, listening, and just have empathy. And, let's say what dark skinned people are saying about mixed race is not wrong. It's not wrong. It's not always the case, but it's also not wrong. So I try to come from a love, from a place of love and understanding. And because I experienced so much love from my white family, I just want to continue that path and say, hey, I understand. I feel where you're coming from. And thank you, that I can be in your Ugandan family having this beautiful barbecue and talking about your culture and learning from this. I think this is, and the more I learn, the better I understand the complexity, and I still feel connected to them.
Yeah.
I have a big South African Black community, and when I'm in their home, there's nothing but love and inclusion and loud singing, and I'm like getting goosebumps. So I'm like, yes, that's the vibe. That's the vibe, and that's what I basically live for.
So do you have, I know this is off the set of questions we did ask, but do you feel like you have a set values that you live by based on all the biasness or surprises that you have faced so far? What are your set values that you feel, okay, these are the values that navigate me forward? I've heard empathy. I've heard the joy of singing and bringing that joyfulness and love. Do you have a certain other sets goals of value where you determine how you want to be in the room? Because, we talk about code switching, right? So it's how we act, how we speak, even dress according to the environment. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. So to your first question about my values, I do appreciate family values quite a lot, and I try to maintain relationships, whether it's with family members or with friends. Always trying also to, let's say, address topics when they're in the room, and then having the ability to overcome. I think that's something I really, really value for family members and friends. That would be something I definitely do pay attention. I love hosting and like gathering people and having, if I'm not with my family, I try at least to do this with my friends and cook Macedonian food. I did that probably all around the world. And, give them a little taste of Macedonian culture, but then also bringing good souls together and connect them. I have so many friends who are now married, who met on my either home parties or get-togethers. So super proud of that. So that is something what is definitely important to me. Living by your own purpose, whatever that is, although we may face resistance or conflict, or disagreement from, family members, maybe partners or whatever. I think finding your true happiness and then living by it is sometimes so difficult, but the beauty and the outcome is just, tremendous. So that's something I really value. And even like when, look at my network, I have people who live exactly by the same mindset.
I think that's beautiful. But I have a question. I like it. I love it. And then what came to mind is, because it just struck me, you, to what age did you live in Macedonia?
I never lived in Macedonia.
And then you moved to Frankfurt.
No. So I'm born and raised in Frankfurt.
Okay.
And then in the summers, I would be in Macedonia.
Okay. So this is my question to you, because I love your set of values. When it comes to the awkwardness, right? Those awkward moments where people are trying to put you in a box and maybe it just doesn't fit, right? And you have these sets of values. How has each of these cultures contributed how you deal with the difficulties? So, you know, when you have like an argument or a conflict and there's like, I'll give you a perspective. Like in the UK, when I had to talk about being open or vulnerable, their set of vulnerability is a different conversation when it comes to a difficult conversation. So you'll always hear, this is not how things are done, but you need to be authentic. And then you're just like, well, how does vulnerability and authenticity be relatable if you're telling me this is not how things are done? Does that make, that
Yes.
unpacking everything into it? How
Very
do you
difficult.
work with your different cultures to bring that to the table?
Very, very difficult. I'm facing a lot of challenges. So let's say the words we use are very powerful, right? And then Germans are extremely good in communication. Like therapy is completely normal. In Macedonia, not.
Really? Okay.
Oh, you don't, as a man, it's an insult if you say, hey, maybe we should see a therapist. The man's ego in the Balkan countries is big and they are not down therapy.
But in Germany, they are.
Yes, in Germany they are. So here comes this interesting thing, where I had a few situations in Macedonia where people, I don't even know what it's called like in English. Let's say you have certain phrases about certain regions, stereotypical bias, and unfortunately, there's a thing in Macedonia where we are such a small country, and the politics are already dividing the people, right?
Like, so you have already dividing the people.
Oh yes. So Macedonia is a very corrupt country, and then the politics are very present. So depending on who you are with or voting for, or maybe even part of the party, you have friends or no friends, even within the family.
Wow.
And then you have all these old sentences of stereotyping people from different regions, where it's always insulting. Like these stereotypes are very insulting. And I'll give you a very good example. The town Prilep, for example, it's a town, 80,000 is the population there. And when I'm in the capital city, and I would say I'm from Prilep, and here comes, the white discrimination. People would tell me, oh, you know what they say about people from Prilep? And I was like, no, please tell me, because I know a lot of really successful people from Prilep. And they would be like, so they say, or it's well known that you don't even take a dog from Prilep, nor a wife, as in, yes, and they do that with so many different cities in Macedonia. And, whenever like that, these situations happen, people expect me to laugh, but I'm like, words are actually so strong, and that's not a nice thing to say. And then people really and I can feel the suppression here. would be like, no, it's just a saying, and don't worry about it and be relaxed about it. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not. I'm not. Maybe that was for a very long time normal to, put people from
Mm.
other cities down. But in fact, you are even dividing with your words within the Macedonian community. And I'm absolutely not okay with that. And in saying that, that city of Prilep has actually a lot of great values. Like, it's the most clear Macedonian language. It's very well known for certain types of food and stuff like that. So it's actually, instead of pointing out the good things, they love to use whatever they've heard in the back, and there is no chance you can change it. I tried.
You and
And like
nothing,
my
not
friends
able.
would be like, don't, because I am speaking up against men. And then my female Macedonian friends say, don't do it, don't. And I'm like, okay, this is not what we do in Germany, but okay.
Yeah, I was just going to
So
say this
that's
is where two of your heritage come together. This is
exactly. So,
that's
so
true.
yeah, you have these type of situations where I can
Mm.
feel like, the way we live in Germany and then coming to Macedonia, there's still like clash, and it's very difficult to break those cycles or to at least get an ear. They're not listening, you know. That's something I found extremely interesting, and also it shows me, okay, I mean, the area of Macedonia experienced in the last 100 years 3 wars, and we know, we've learned already that every war, like puts the people back into reset mode and rebuild, etc. So yeah, sometimes I can feel that it's an old-fashioned way, and it's a different role between men and women, and what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. And if you're very modern, it's something. And then I really feel privileged to say, now I'm here in Macedonia, but I can always go to the United States, I can always go to Germany. I don't have to live within that environment if I don't have to.
Yeah.
So I still want to speak up for the women who have to deal with that. And I
Yeah.
don't mind to be that strong, independent women who's speaking up against certain things. And I try to use soft language, but yeah, in the Balkan environment, it's not.
It
Yeah,
takes
there's a
time.
lot of potential for progress.
Well, there's the saying, right? No mud, no lotus. So if you didn't have problems, you wouldn't be busy with the solution. I
Exactly.
do see it. And I see that coming true, especially from listening to you. I can relate, but even though I'm from different cultures, I'm born and raised Dutch on a Caribbean island and Indian roots. So you have like one extreme, and another, but they're all like in layers. And to me, when you grow up in it, and that's what I feel from you as well, when you grow up in this mixture of it all, it's normalized because you're habitually busy with all three or all of them at the same time. For you, it's Germany. For you, it's even Macedonia, but also in the States. You have all these mixtures going on. So when you say, okay, I'm this modern person, you are able to be more sensitive to what it sounds like. You're more sensitive to reading the room,
Mhm.
from gender layer, cultural layer, then geolocation, I would also think, and race. It's all of them mixed together. This is why when people talk about the one size fits all, I roll my eyes. Or they say when I don't see color, or I don't see culture, I'm just like, okay, let's dial this back. I don't
How
know how
do
you
you,
feel about it.
yeah, but how do you, especially with that one sentence, I don't see color, how do you navigate a conversation then?
From Are you asking from my side?
Yeah.
To me, I use humor very selectively, but I also use it in weight. So sometimes I know when if I greet passive aggression with passive aggression, I'm not going to have an answer. So if somebody comes across and says something completely out of line, I always weigh it up. I'm like, how comfortable am I with that person to tell them like it is? Because the Dutch person with me would be like, yeah, we don't do that. So if I'm in the Netherlands, I would get to that approach. But if I'm like in the Asian community, when passive aggression is there, I pick and choose like you do. I'll be like, okay, so let me be Caribbean on this, where I'll laugh it off, but I will tell you in a very delicate way, there is color. And I'll be like, oh, but I notice mine, and I'll take it to ownership. I'll be like, oh, but I notice I have a different color, but I'm okay with it. Are you okay with mine? And then they're like, okay, because then they've kind of understood that I'm telling you in a very nice way, this is not appropriate. And then I find also genders, it does make a difference, In certain cultures, there is that more equivalence. And then in the Asian community, I'm like, oh, I have to bat my eyelids for this? No. And I can feel my struggle inside. And where it helps me is to really pause, be quiet for a little bit, and let my mind pick and choose where it needs to be. I don't know if you have had that.
Yes, absolutely. So let's say in Germany, or in general, let's say even like traveling, and like meeting a lot of, and I have to point that out, white people, and finding myself in several conversations. Usually when that topic comes up, I already have an impression of the person. And
really?
Yes, like a first impression, a first feeling of the person. And whenever I'm now with like in a new environment, I do not speak, I listen. And depending on the situation, I prefer to ask questions first. How come you don't see color? What do you mean by saying that? To get a better understanding where that person is coming from. And what I've learned from my Black community is, because it happened a lot of times in Cape Town especially, that I'm invited to posh parties, everybody white, and me. And I'm like, where am I? We're in Africa, right? So where are my brothers and sisters? It's like, hello. And I've noticed that quite a lot. I was last year for 4 months in Cape Town. So I started to ask questions, and even when they introduced me, they wanted to make sure she looks African, but she's from Germany, like this. And I said,
I call it the exotic bird effect. We become exotic birds for them.
Exactly. But it's like, don't worry, she's not from here. She does not carry that culture, which is actually like a Black South African culture is super rich. But like trying to tell them that I'm not one of them, I said, I don't want that. I can introduce
very
myself.
Uncomfortable.
I introduce myself as Sarita, but don't tell me she's German right away. Don't do that. Don't. It's not even correct. I'm Macedonian, but so I try to be more sensitive about this, and I address that in wide circles as well. And so when I'm around my Black and brown friends, I always say, okay, scenario, I'm in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to represent best? What can I do in which way can I communicate in order to, stand up for people who are struggling with racism, with all of these things? What can I say in a room of white people? So
what is the answer?
Well, when people tell me, for example, I get that quite a lot, that, like Black Americans, it's their own fault that they're in this situation. I take a deep breath and I'm like, and then I go again.
Run that sentence by me again.
So I had white people saying that the reason Black people are in that situation in the United States, that there's actually no racism, and that it's the Black people's own responsibility for being in that situation.
Okay, that's loaded. All right. So what? So how do we? How do you? How does this? How do they navigate this? Like you were saying, you were going to
I
give me.
first check their knowledge before I start with everything. And then I also check whether they are open to listen and learn, or if that even comes with a maybe even passive aggressive attitude of that's my statement and I'm not moving from this. Because I'm very careful with investing my energy, you know? So
Big one. Yeah.
I ask for the question and would say, for example, define situation. Let's start from there, you
Yeah.
know, and then be like, yeah, you know, etc. And then I would test them and say, for example, did you know that 75% of all prisoners in the United States are Black? And then I can get slowly like a feeling of, you
Yeah.
know, where the person is standing. And then according to that, I navigate myself, or it happened that I remove myself from that situation and say, thank you. I'm going to grab a drink, you know, have a wonderful evening. And that's it.
Yeah. It's amazing because what you're tapping on, people don't realize how much demanding it is and how it can go easy into that energy field. And I find that what you're saying, asking the questions, is very relevant. But sometimes I also wonder, when you have to ask these questions, right? Don't you get tired of it sometimes?
Absolutely. Just by, you know, like having to be confronted and not just having a light, beautiful, funny conversation. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it does. But I'm telling you something, you know, I think in those circles where I'm, you know, moving around,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, especially as an entrepreneur,
I was going
especially
to say
as,
that.
you know, a person from Germany, we like network, you know, that's how and I think network, especially when you leave your, you know, that country, it is important. Network is important. So if you are a digital nomad, if you live in several countries, this is definitely something what comes with it. But I just it's sometimes energy sucking, but I also learned that it's maybe, I don't know, I don't want to call it like I would even say it's a little bit my responsibility to do so. And as I grew up in a different way and I was able to develop my brain and everything in a super healthy way and not having to deal with that while growing up, people cannot offend me or trigger me with that because I was already an adult. So for me, it's just another conversation. You know, people can still insult you in other ways, or try to put you down in other ways. So this is how I see it in a similar way. It can always happen, and I've also met a lot of people who said, "Wow, I wasn't even aware. Thank you so much for sharing." So these are my motivations to say, you know, whenever that type of situation comes up. I've also developed a very, very strong, how can I say that? Like, if a person is not well educated and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to learn, it just shows me how much I have invested in my education.
Yeah,
So
there's a certain gratitude and appreciation that kicks in, for
it's
sure.
not even triggering me. It's
Mm.
really, it just gives me an understanding of, wow, the work I put in, or the, you know, Black and brown people I have listened to. And it's still a great feeling. It doesn't really trigger me, but I agree with you. It's definitely, you have to um, you have to find the right doses for yourself. because it is still energy consuming. Whereas other people who may be a little bit more ignorant don't even bother, and for that, there is no energy invest for them.
Yeah, because just some of them just flies over.
Exactly.
Just
Good for them,
over.
soft life, whatever.
But speaking of which, because you are definitely a very dynamic woman. I remember when we met, and then we just spoke about what I was up to and what you were up to, and we were also very aware that in the room we were very diverse as well within ourselves. I remember we both were sitting at the table, and I think processing the whole morning, as it were. And then you told me about your entrepreneurial journey.
What I liked so much about Sarita's conversation is how she turned every moment as a gift. She would turn it around and she would inspire somebody else. She would challenge somebody else. She's not afraid to share her mind in such an elegant, graceful way. And for me, that's what really stood out. So tune in for next week's episode where we dive in about her entrepreneurial spirit. And if you haven't yet, do join my newsletter. It would be nice to engage with you. It's not just a newsletter, it's more like a community. I would love to grow and share my insights, get your perspective on it, and let us help and support one another along the way. I mean, in this distracted world with so much information, sometimes just that one conversation can make all the difference. Have a good one. Till the next one. Take care.